So Roger, end of May now.
Almost the end of May.
Almost the end of May. Let's just deal with a quick administrative thing first, because I know the centre here has gone through a bit of a name change. Can you tell me a bit about that? What's that about?
It's to reflect our core business. Our core business is in applied climate sciences, particularly for agriculture. 70 or 80% of our research income is in agriculture, so applied climate sciences, I think, fits the bill. So, and an international centre, because we do work in Vietnam and India and Chile, Central America, and so on, as well as a lot in Australia, of course. So it's reflecting some international leadership in this area.
And I understand over time this is going to mean stronger international connections, which means we access their data, which gives us better prediction.
Better understanding of global climate patterns. It's a global climate pattern with local impacts, so you have to have international collaboration. Sure. We have to bring in income as well, of course. So it's worthwhile interacting with folks around the world.
Excellent. So Roger, at this time of year we always turn our attention to what does the next 6 months hold?
Yeah.
So any thoughts at this point?
It's an interesting pattern. It's an El Nino pattern developing in the Pacific Ocean. It probably just has developed in the last couple of days as we go to air here. The sea temperatures have warmed up in the central and eastern Pacific. The southern oscillation this year around is probably dragging its heels a bit, so the atmosphere is waiting a little, but don't be surprised to see that drop over the next month. But the subsurface, the temperatures beneath the surface of the ocean are incredibly warm out in the central and eastern Pacific. Hottest I've seen in, I don't know, many years. So if that bubbles at the surface, it might be quite a major El Nino event. But importantly, the impacts aren't directly tied to the strength of the El Nino in this part of the world in Australia. It is in other countries to some extent. So some should make this point. Some very strong El Ninos don't necessarily give us the worst droughts. Some very weak El Ninos can give us quite severe droughts because of other factors.
So, I mean, this is probably a difficult question to ask you. I will nonetheless. And you talked about a strong or a weak El Nino. What's your gut feeling at this point?
Probably quite a strong one, similar to 82, 83, I'd have thought.
So what does that mean? Like in a nutshell?
That means that parts of Australia could well come under quite severe drought as the year progresses. Maybe northern New South Wales, those regions. And I notice, in fact, that the UK and European models are already picking northern New South Wales as being critically impacted. One saving grace for folks on the Darling Downs and parts of northeast New South Wales, for example, is we can still get quite decent thunderstorms during the spring and summer, and that can often get a summer crop through. So winter crops look a bit precarious, particularly if you haven't had much of it.
That's for 2014.
It's about 2014, yeah. We're only going 2014 at this stage. So winter crops look a bit precarious unless you've got really good subsoil moisture and you can pick up the odd shower somewhere. So that's pretty much what's happening. This El Nino pattern is developing. That generally means, as we know, potential for drier than average conditions throughout most of eastern Australia and northeast Tasmania. And northern Australia as we go into summer, so it can impact on the pasture growing period of North Queensland, Northern Territory as we head into the summer period. And also there's another system still there from last year, that's the latitude of the subtropical ridge, the high pressure belt being a lot further north. And that cut out our rainfall a lot over New South Wales, Queensland last year. That's still there actually, or it looks like coming back to this.
And that was a bit of an odd thing anyway at the time,
It only happens over about 10 or 11 years, but it's still in the system, so that's going to perhaps exacerbate the impact of El Nino in some areas.
So Roger, I'm going to get our crystal ball out again and just so if we're a grain grower, then a horticultural grower, then maybe a livestock producer on the eastern seaboard of Australia, broadly speaking. So let's just start with grain. So on the eastern seaboard of Australia, what would you...
There's a high chance of below normal rainfall as the year progresses, and particularly during midwinter and spring. A fairly high risk of a late damaging frost. Right. So there's that to consider as well. The general circulation models, particularly those from overseas, are showing a pretty dry winter spring already on the extended models, with again a high risk of a late frost. So again, unless you're lucky you've got plenty of deep moisture and so on, you might be able to get through, but it's going to be a year where you take a pretty cautious approach, I would suggest. As we go into summer though, for the grain producers, there's potential. I know when you run ABDI and some of these models that the summer crops don't do too badly because of these summer storms that we can still get. They're not so affected by El Nino. So folks that get summer storms might do okay with the summer crop.
So I guess that would be the grain horticulture story almost, which is frosts, late frosts. severe frost, subsoil moisture, and storms.
Storms to help them through summer. So if they're in a storm belt in the northeast part of New South Wales or southeast Queensland, that might save the day for summer.
Sure. And I'm presuming, therefore, it'll be the same message for livestock producers, more just be aware in terms of level of subsoil moisture.
And pasture growth and so on, and
Sure.
consider early destocking as this thing starts to unfold. And what we often say to farmer grower groups and so on, just watch something like the SOI over the next couple of weeks,
Yep.
a couple of months. If it starts to dive, that will tell the tale. Then each month you can sort of fine-tune some of this
Yeah.
information. Some months might not be too bad, some 3-month periods might be better than others, and we can pick our way through the year. So it's always important to update this. Just track the SOI is probably not a bad first
Sure.
start. Not following your temperature if you've got a fever. Just tracking the SOI is a bit the same.
Sure.
So it's a very worthwhile first step.
Okay. So I guess in summary then, this is really the crunch point coming up. People have just got to track what's going on with the SOI, best indicator, and we'll talk separately about the idea of the SOI and the GCM models and so on. So take-home message is
Take a pretty cautious approach, and for those folks that get summer storms, there's still some hope there. And keep updated, because there may be periods as the Pacific might wax and wane. It might often it can do strange things during an El Nino, which might bring in some relief rain. It's always worth updating that, pick up a bit of opportunity
Great.
there if that might occur. But yeah, keep a good weather eye out for this type of year.
Okay. Right. Well, thanks, Roger.